Nope.
My name is Derek West. I don't know if words will be able to capture the nightmare I experienced a few days ago, but I will try. On Friday morning, I was driving through an ordinary, winding country road, surrounded by a sea of trees, on a 6-hour-long journey to visit my parents. About 2 hours into my trip, a light fog formed, but the visibility was still relatively clear. With music blaring from the radio, and the anticipation of a long-awaited reunion at the end of my journey, I felt great. Suddenly, almost instantly, the fog grew thicker. It shrouded the air in an inky void. My headlights were useless in this darkness. Alarm bells rang in my head. I flicked off the radio and slammed my car to a halt. Taking deep breaths, I calmed myself down. Thick fog in the area was rare, but not unheard of. I would just wait for it to thin out. Everything would be fine. But after about 30 minutes of waiting, the fog was just as thick. Looking out of the window was like staring into an ocean of gray. My car's headlights still illuminated nothing. I picked up my cell phone to call someone for help. It was dead, and I had forgotten to take my charger with me. There was nothing to do but wait. After a few more minutes of waiting, I began to shiver. With numb fingers, I switched on the car and turned up the heating system. This was supposed to be summer. Why was it so cold? At last, the fog cleared. I breathed an audible sigh of relief as it faded away. It was then that I realized that I truly was in a real-life horror story. Somehow, defying all laws of physics, my car and I had been transported to the middle of a town. Every building was the same, small and bricked, with curtained windows and black tiled roofs. There were no gardens, only pine trees strewn haphazardly. I appeared to be on a bumpy road. Then, I saw a figure stumbling towards me. He wore police attire and walked with a deranged limp. He waved at me. Reaching the car, he began to tap on the window. He had silver eyes and dark brown hair. His complexion was gray. I nervously rolled down the window. "I'm sorry, officer. I think I'm lost. Could you tell me where I am?" I muttered in a shaky voice. He stared at me, unblinking. After about half a minute, he replied, "Welcome to nowhere, Mr. West." I was shocked that this stranger knew my name, and disturbed that the town was called Nowhere. Most alarming of all was the cold wind streaming in through the window, and the presence of snow, even though it was late summer. The policeman pointed to a tiny, weather-beaten sign. I could only make out the word "Nowhere" engraved onto it. I looked around again and saw that the town was now filled with blank-faced people. They stood, frozen, unmoving. Men, women, and children, like statues. All of them had pale, gray skin. While I was distracted, the officer grabbed hold of my arm, squeezing it tight. I screamed and tried to wrench away, but he was too strong. Thinking quickly, I began to roll up the window. He didn't react. As his arm was crushed, he continued to hold on to me tight. I looked at him in disbelief. He chuckled at me, then reared back his head and shrieked like a banshee. All the townspeople turned their head towards me. In unison, they walked towards the car and began slamming their bodies against it. As they did so, parts of them began to fall off, revealing flesh underneath. Arms were snapping against the car and falling to the ground. Faces were magically peeling off. They began to chant, "Join us. Join us. Join us." Those who still had their faces were smiling happily. I switched on the car, slammed my foot down, and drove. The entire body of the vehicle was spattered and smeared with blood. The policeman's arm was still stuck in the windshield. The rest of him was nowhere to be seen. As I mowed down the mob in front of me, the rest gave chase from behind, still chanting. At some point, I overtook them and found myself back in a shroud of fog. I drove on. When the mist finally cleared, I found myself back on the country road. I drove as fast as I could, ignoring speed limits until I was safe in my parents' home. I'm still there. I'm terrified to drive back home. In a few days, I'll just book a plane ticket. I don't know what those creatures are, but I'm not going to risk another encounter with them. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, you know what to do. Like and subscribe so that you too can join us. Join us. Join us. Shout out to the author of the story, Reddit user SVEldritchCreature108. I'll leave a link down to the original post, as well as a link to their Reddit profile where you can read more of their stories down below. Question of the week. If you, like the Derek West character in the story, were stuck in this town, and you had to choose one fictional character to help you fight your way out, who would you choose? Now, usually there's no correct answer, but if you don't choose John Wick, I think you are incorrect. That's just me. I'm gonna go with Mr. Wick, the Baba Yaga. Until next time, everybody, remember to stay safe out there. I'll be seeing you in the next video.